A man was trapped in the beginner's village for 16 whole years because of a system bug. To leave, one had to reach level 5. But every time I was about to level up to 5, the system would spit out garbled code and reset me back to level 1. As time passed, the monsters here kept getting stronger. From low-level wild dogs at the start, they evolved into dragons capable of destroying heaven and earth. In order to survive, I swung my sword endlessly every single day. The monsters I defeated could probably fill the endless abyss of the beginner's village itself. But today, the system administrator suddenly discovered this forgotten world. He couldn't understand why a complete newbie like me had survived this long, with such pathetic stats and skills. In the past 16 years, he had performed 5 other world summons. Not one of those players survived for more than a year. To cover up his mistake, he decided to transfer me into a massive world, the demon era of the 2nd century. The very next moment, a giant vortex appeared above my head out of nowhere. Before I could react, I was pulled into it by an overwhelming force. With a flash of thunder, I was teleported to the level 20 map, the continent of Ratna. Staring at the vibrant and wondrous world before me, I couldn't suppress my excitement. At last, the system prompt rang out. I had finally reached level 5. Immediately after, a mission panel popped up. It showed that my ultimate quest was to eliminate one of the 6 goddesses of Ratna. The reward was unimaginably tempting, not only immortality, but also the chance to return to Earth with my full power intact, and 3 additional wishes granted. But before I could even think further, a deafening roar shook the ground. I instinctively reached for my sword only to remember I had left it by the river while bathing. A massive dragon raised its head, glaring at me with fury. "Filthy outsider demon," it snarled, "how dare you trespass into my forest?" Before I could respond, a stream of ghostly blue flame spewed from its mouth. I barely dodged it in time. Clenching my fist, I leapt forward, charging straight at the dragon. But it didn't even try to dodge, its eyes filled only with disdain. "You overestimate yourself," it sneered. I had only planned to distract it long enough to grab my sword. But to my shock, my punch sent the dragon flying. It turned out that every time the system reset my level, it never actually erased the stats I had gained. Over 16 years, my hidden attributes had stacked up to an overwhelming 1,300 points. After a tense but oddly civil conversation, I learned the dragon's name was Aifor, a wanted dragon. He explained why this continent despised outsiders like me. 40 years ago, otherworlders suddenly appeared in Ratna. At first, relations were peaceful. But soon, those outsiders began slaughtering the people of Ratna to level up. Among them was a group of powerful players who formed an alliance called Great Earth, attempting to overthrow the goddesses. Their strength was beyond imagination, no one could stop them, especially with level 100 leaders at their helm. Then, 4 heroes were born into the world: Owalat, the Sword King, Kanuya of the Demon Isles, Rediggerhen, and Orion, the Transcendent. They became known as the 4 heroes of the continent. With their arrival, the outsiders were swiftly crushed. Soon after, the 6 goddesses declared that all otherworlders had signed pacts with the demon god. From then on, any Ratna native who encountered one must kill them without hesitation. Hearing Aifor's story, I stood up in anger. After being trapped in that barren wasteland for over a decade, I had finally escaped only to find myself branded the enemy of the entire continent. No matter what, whether I had to bargain with the goddesses or fight against them, I swore I would kill this so-called demon god and return alive to Earth. Aifor told me that ordinary people could never meet a goddess, only heroes of great renown, or those who achieved legendary feats. Now, the power of demon god Palos still lingered in this world. To get an audience with a goddess, I would first have to hunt monsters. And the very first step was joining the Hunters Guild. Guided by Aifor, I traveled for 2.5 days until I reached a place called Freedom City. Situated near the forest, teeming with monsters and dungeons, it drew hunters from far and wide. As soon as I entered the city, I headed straight to the Hunters Guild. But the moment I declared I wanted to become a hunter, the tavern fell silent. Every gaze turned toward me. Hands tightened around weapons. Even the receptionist girl broke into a nervous sweat. My build was too large for an ordinary man, yet I wasn't a hunter. They suspected I was an outsider. Still, since they couldn't be sure, the receptionist followed procedure and asked me to place my hand on the testing stone. The result showed I was only a level 5 swordsman. The room fell into dead silence. Then, a moment later, it erupted in thunderous laughter. Even the receptionist girl struggled to keep from laughing, apologizing as she explained. Usually, mysterious people with higher levels are outsiders. But you? We've never heard of such a weak one. But when I learned that registering as a hunter required 300 gold coins, I froze. Luckily, I had borrowed 400 gold from AIFOR, his savings from the past 2.5 years. Seeing my awkward hesitation, the onlookers laughed even harder, assuming I was just a clueless bumpkin. After all, true outsiders never lacked money. Still, I successfully obtained my hunter's badge. Determined not to disgrace myself, I decided to work hard and prove my worth. Just as I was about to accept a dungeon quest, a man walked up behind me. You? A level 5 newbie going into a dungeon? You're just asking to die. The system displayed his level, 27. His name was Olaid, one of the stronger hunters in the tavern. The receptionist quickly pointed out, Olaid, isn't your team heading to the Sate Forest? You're still missing one member, right? This newcomer looks pretty good. But Olaid shook his head. I already found a new teammate. The girl behind him introduced herself, ATIS, a level 25 mage. But through the system panel, I saw her true level, 37. Olaid smirked. If it's our lovely receptionist's request, I might be willing to take along even a level 5 rookie. He reached for my greatsword. But no matter how hard he pulled, the blade didn't budge an inch. I merely glanced at him, and he turned pale with fear. This scene caught the eye of a burly man upstairs. He came down, introduced himself as Bokman, and warmly invited me to join his party. He even said I was the muscle man he had been searching for. Bokman explained the basics of Freedom City. It was centered around monster hunting, with trade and production focused on monster materials. The main hunting grounds were two, the Plains Dungeon and the entrance to Sate Forest. Recently, villages near the forest had suffered frequent monster attacks, so many hunters had taken contracts to investigate, Bokman's team included. His squad of 4 consisted of Bokman, the shield and defender; Amber, the spearman attacker; Evan, the druid healer; Hubert, the mage for ranged damage. They specialized in defense-based strategies, ranking first in Freedom City for mission success. Trusted by all, they often received professional extermination contracts. But since my level was low, I could only act as a pack mule at first. Still, they promised to split the rewards evenly with me. During one battle, the monsters, already pushed back by the team, noticed me, the weakest one. Their leader charged at me to establish dominance. Unaware of the danger, I was casually flicking pebbles, and by chance, one rock I tossed erased the boss's HP bar entirely. Yet the system message appeared, target too low level, no experience gained. Frustrated, I began searching the forest like mad for stronger monsters to level up. But after running 2.5 laps around the entire forest, I found nothing. Just as I was about to give up, I heard a familiar roar like the monsters I'd once fought back in the beginner's village. I rushed toward the sound, full of hope, only to find not a monster, but ATIS, completely naked. And to my shock, ATIS was actually a man. Before I could leave, his voice rang out from behind me. Stop. This is no place for a level 5 rookie like you. You'd better put on some clothes first. That single line completely enraged Olaid. You damn level 5 rookie, he roared. With his thunder sword raised high, he charged straight at me. I had originally thought it was better to avoid unnecessary conflict, so I quickly bowed and tried to apologize. But to my shock, the hilt of my greatsword accidentally jabbed right into Olaid's unspeakable place. A bone-shattering scream echoed through the entire forest. That night, back at our lodging, I sat alone outside, consumed by guilt. Seeing me like this, Bokman came out and comforted me. We already heard what happened from ATIS. It wasn't your fault. Don't blame yourself too much. Thanks to emergency treatment, Olaid's life was saved. But he might never regain his dignity as a man. All the men present fell into silence. They understood that kind of pain. At such a moment, no words of comfort could mean anything. The next morning, ATIS took Olaid back to Freedom City. Later, I heard that once Olaid discovered ATIS was actually male, he disappeared. Some said he went alone to hunt in the dungeons. Seeing the team's gloomy expressions, I couldn't help but ask. Olaid's level isn't low, why is everyone so worried? Amber sighed. Olaid's level is fine for dealing with ordinary native monsters. But going into a dungeon alone? That's no different from suicide. The monsters inside dungeons don't belong to our world. They were created when demon god Palos built the dungeons. Many of them are born above level 30. Hearing this, I understood at once. I had to go into a dungeon. Maybe the monsters there could finally help me level up. But if it's so dangerous, I asked, why would Olaid still go? Amber explained. The only thing that might cure him is the Artepet, a type of equipment with countless forms and special abilities, found only in the dungeons. Legend says some Artepet treasures can heal any injury or illness. Olaid must have pinned all his hopes on that. That night, once everyone was asleep, I slipped out alone. I had planned to ask AIFO about how to reach the dungeon, but as I turned a corner, I stumbled upon something else. A monster I had never seen before. Through the system panel, I learned it was a level 31 dungeon monster. The system also warned me, its body was covered in hardened scales, resistant to swords and other physical attacks. To my surprise, it could even speak human language. Once it realized I was just a weak rookie, it mocked me without restraint. I refused to back down. Drawing my greatsword, I slashed. With a single strike, the creature was split clean in two. The mocking laughter of its two companions died instantly, replaced by sheer terror. One of them, not too bright, still wanted to taste me. But the other sensed danger and immediately fled. Before it could get far, I caught up to it. It tried to escape by burrowing under a massive tree. But with just a flick of my wrist, I uprooted the tree completely. Beneath it was a glowing portal. The system confirmed, a gate to the Plains dungeon. Yet I had never heard of dungeons spontaneously generating portals like this. I asked the trembling monster if this was their doing. It frantically shook its head and claimed ignorance. I warned it to keep the portal hidden, to guard it, and to let no one else pass. The creature thought for a moment, then nodded in agreement. My reasoning apparently made sense to it. I stepped through. Inside the dungeon, I wandered for some time, but the monsters I encountered were laughably weak, all one-hit kills. By accident, I stumbled into the boss's lair. On the ground ahead, something gleamed with dazzling light. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be the Artepet? Checking the system panel, I saw its name, Fireball Bracelet. But something felt wrong. Such a powerful item should be guarded by a boss, yet none appeared. Just then, the system displayed its details. By shouting Summon Fire, the user could launch a fireball. Remaining uses, 30. Excited, I put it on immediately. What man didn't dream of casting fireballs? But my joy vanished when I saw the requirement, level 31 to equip. Disappointed, I sighed and removed it. This thing was useless to me for now. I'd have to sell it. Suddenly, the dungeon shook violently. Before me, a passage opened, leading deeper. I entered and found myself in a vast, empty hall. At its center floated a magical core, the kind that could shut down the entire dungeon. Anyone here? I shouted. If not, I'm shutting this place down. The moment I finished, two massive tentacles shot out, wrapping around my arms. From above descended a towering monster, level 45. My lips curled into a smile. Finally, something worth some experience. But before I could act, the hall's doors burst open. To my shock, Olaid walked in. Laughing wildly, he proclaimed he had finally escaped. I froze. Did he recognize my identity as an outsider? But then Olaid's eyes locked onto me, filled with confusion. Before I could explain, he suddenly laughed again. So this dungeon can even spawn illusions that mimic my inner fears? Otherwise, how could a level 5 rookie be here? I quickly played along. Oof. So you saw through me, not bad. Without hesitation, Olade lunged at me with his twin blades. At the same time, the boss's tentacles struck at his back. As I wrestled with the monster's grip, a chilling aura swept over me. Olade's new skill, forged from his loss of manhood, the Sword of Despair. To protect myself, I headbutt upward with all my strength, nearly killing the boss instantly. This boss is way too weak, I muttered. But Olade, blinded by hatred, kept slashing wildly at me. Every strike was aimed at my most vital place. Not wanting to hurt him, I kept dodging. Soon, the tentacles bound him tightly. The truth became clear: the boss thought Olade was my ally, and magnified his hatred of me, turning him into a puppet of rage. For more tentacles pierced into his body, and the next moment, Olade transformed into a grotesque monster, charging at me with massive arms. I didn't dodge. Drawing my greatsword, I struck the ground. With one swing, the entire dungeon split apart, boss and all. As the boss lay dying, it stared at me in disbelief. How could a level 5 rookie unleash such destructive power with sword aura alone? Then, from its body, a small red insect crawled out, its true core. The bug tried to flee, muttering about reporting to its master. But as it buzzed through the air, I mistook it for a mutant fly and casually swatted it down. The system chimed. You have slain the Eye of Control, LV-45. EXP gained, 110,000. I trembled with excitement. In the beginner's village, killing those giant hounds only gave a bit over 200 EXP each. By my old leveling curve, going from level 5 to 6 should have taken around 2,200 EXP. Yet here I was, rewarded with 110,000. Surely I'd jumped dozens of levels at once. But when I checked, my next level required over 50 billion EXP. I froze, utterly dumbfounded. Stunned, I stumbled out of the dungeon. Stunned, I wandered back to camp. Stunned, I even stole a monster's prey and ate it absent-mindedly. Days passed. Bokman's team scoured the surrounding forest. After confirming no more monsters remained near Sate Forest, they prepared to return. But as we reached the city gates, we were stopped by knights demanding to see our passes. It turned out that 5 days ago, the Hunters Guild had recalled all hunters from outside the walls. To avoid my teammates being captured, I went alone to the trading post to sell the spoils of battle. But the shopkeeper refused to take anything from my backpack. He explained that these were dangerous times, a single careless move could bring disaster. Freedom City's prosperity relied entirely on the dungeons, and now that the dungeons were sealed, business had collapsed. Even if I buy this stuff, I'll only lose money, he said. Even when I lowered the price to 30%, the shopkeeper still firmly refused. Just then, a messenger from the church stepped inside. To my shock, the system couldn't display his level or any information about him. He noticed my strange reaction, and in an instant, appeared right in front of me. You can't see my level, can you? He demanded. I could only play dumb, pretending I knew nothing. You're still wandering around at a time like this? Don't you think that makes you look suspicious? He pressed. I quickly explained, I only just became a hunter. I don't really understand what's going on. The man named Wen Yen shoved a testing token into my hand. If what you say is true, your level should be very low. When he saw I was only level 5, even he was a bit stunned. After a brief apology, he turned and left. By then, I was drenched in sweat. Looks like having a low level did have its advantages after all. After I passed the church's inspection, the shopkeeper finally agreed to buy my goods, though only at 20% of their value. But then he suddenly pulled out the Arte pet, asking if I wanted to sell that too. Alarmed, I quickly leaned close and whispered that this item was not for sale. Unfortunately, the shopkeeper's hand slipped, and the Arte pet tumbled to the ground, landing right at the messenger's feet. The man bent down, picked it up, and fixed me with a cold stare. A level 5 rookie like you, how could you possibly own an Arte pet? I expect a reasonable explanation, he said. Realizing my cover was about to be blown, I prepared to strike. But before I could act, someone stepped between us. It was ATIS. ATIS handed over a token, explaining that the Arte pet was something he had asked me to sell on his behalf. After confirming Atis's identity as a dragonkin hunter, the messenger allowed us to leave. But before we could get far, he called out again. "Tell me, what is that Artipet's ability?" ATIS and I gave two completely different answers. Suspicion flashed in the messenger's eyes. He immediately unleashed a howling hurricane cage, trapping us inside. "One of you must be the outsider who shut down the dungeon," he declared. Not wanting to drag ATIS into this, I was about to confess, but suddenly, loud, over-the-top laughter echoed from the city gates. Standing proudly atop a carriage was none other than Olade, boasting about his glorious victory in closing the dungeon. That's when it hit me. After defeating the dungeon boss, I had been so shaken that I completely forgot about Olade. When he woke up and saw the boss's corpse, he mistakenly believed he had delivered the killing blow. Overjoyed, he took the dungeon's core and shut it down himself. Unfortunately for him, his bragging landed him right in the church's trap. He was immediately arrested on the spot. After leaving all my gold with Bokeman's team, I quietly slipped away. On the road, ATIS urged me to join his party, promising he would protect me. Owing him from before, I agreed, at least for now. Together, we cut down countless monsters as we traveled. But near a small village, we encountered a creature from the dungeon. We went in, hoping to find survivors, but instead, we walked straight into an ambush. Before the monsters could even strike, ATIS unleashed a wave of fire, igniting the entire village. "Not too bright, are they?" he sneered. "Trying to ambush a fire mage in wooden houses?" From one of the burning huts, a wolf demon leapt out with a spear, lunging at ATIS. But ATIS had already prepared for it. He hurled his staff, and before the wolf demon could react, it exploded, engulfing the whole village in flames. When the fire finally died, we discovered a strange corpse, frozen solid despite the inferno's thousands of degrees. Then I noticed a faint blue glow seeping from an old well. Peering inside, I realized it was a portal to a high-level dungeon. But wolf demons couldn't possibly create portals, which meant something far more terrifying was lurking in the village. Before we could flee, snow and ice blanketed the entire area. A chilling laugh echoed behind us. From the shadows stepped a skeleton draped in chains of gold, the highest-level monster I had ever seen since leaving the beginner's village. A Fuyao, a being born when a mage willingly transformed themselves into an undead monster, immune to all normal physical attacks. The power gap was overwhelming. Atis's will to fight vanished instantly. He still cast a fireball at the creature, but the Fuyao waved it away effortlessly. What he didn't expect was that ATIS had hidden a magic box inside the flames. The explosion pierced through the monster's body. Grabbing my wrist, ATIS dragged me into a sprint. He knew the magic box could delay the Fuyao at most 10 seconds. But before we could escape, an ice wall erupted from the ground, blocking our path. In moments, walls of ice surrounded the entire area. We were trapped. The cold was suffocating. Even breathing became difficult. ATIS discovered that the freezing air had sealed all surrounding mana. His fire magic was completely useless. The Fuyao raised its left hand, unleashing blades of frost at us. I held firm, but ATIS was already weakening. "I'm sorry," he said hoarsely. "I was too selfish." Then, without hesitation, ATIS stabbed his own body with a staff, igniting his inner magic to keep his body from freezing. He charged forward, tossing more staffs that erupted in thunderous blasts. From the smoke, a roar shook the heavens. A blazing dragon, level 52, emerged. ATIS was Dragonkin. No wonder his reactions before had been so intense. The Fuyao laughed wickedly. "A dragon? And such a young one. If I capture you and dissect your body, perhaps I can create that thing ahead of schedule." For dragons, like outsiders, had the ability to gain experience by killing. Before the monster could act, ATIS unleashed Dragonfire, melting away its ice. But even the flames couldn't wound it. Shards of frozen roots shot at me like lightning. I was ready to block, but ATIS shielded me, his body absorbing the blow. Despite being pierced by countless spikes, he never wavered, determined to fulfill his promise to protect me. But his strength was fading fast. Even as his blood froze, he kept apologizing. I swore I'd protect you, but it looks like I'll fall first. Hearing him, I finally realized my mistake. From the start, I had the power to end this. But out of fear of exposing myself, I hid behind Atis. Now, as the Fuyao conjured a massive frost greatsword, preparing to finish us both, I stepped forward. Atis stared at the blade descending from the sky, seemingly ready to accept death. But I smiled. In his disbelieving gaze, I gathered my strength and leapt. Level 5 rookie? Let's see what you can really do, the Fuyao sneered. Then his mocking expression froze as my simplest horizontal slash shattered the frost greatsword, and even the towering ice walls crumbled to dust. The explosion's shockwave tore half the monster's body apart. Atis stood stunned, unable to process what he'd just witnessed. But before I could explain, vines erupted from the ground, binding us tight. Before our eyes, the shattered Fuyao reassembled itself completely. These vines drain life until their prey dies, it hissed. Now tell me, how does a supposed level 5 rookie wield such power? I flexed, muscles surging, and the hellvine snapped apart in my bare hands. The monster's hollow eyes widened in disbelief. Impossible, no one can tear through hellvines with brute strength alone. With one clean strike of my greatsword, its body splintered again only to reform once more. Its voice trembled with shock. Just what, are you? The monster finished speaking and launched a volley of ice spikes straight at Atis behind me. Reacting instantly, I spun around and threw myself in front of him, blocking the attack. But to my surprise, the Fuyao, instead of retreating, summoned a robe of condensed mana. He was preparing to unleash a high-concentration laser blast to wipe us out completely. With a thunderous boom, the beam shot forward, but I didn't even flinch. Flexing my arms, my muscles bulged as I used raw strength to tear chunks of the frozen ground, raising them as shields. Through the corner of my eye, I noticed something strange, cracks forming along the Fuyao's body. Without hesitation, I pushed off with both legs, propelling myself like a rocket. So fast that even the laser split apart behind me. In the blink of an eye, I was upon him, my hand clamped around his neck. You've got a lot of cracks on your body, I said coldly. If cracks can form, then maybe if I smash you into powder, you won't be able to recover at all. With that, I wrenched his leg bone free. Gripping it tight, I scraped it furiously against my greatsword. And just as I thought, when his body crumbled into powder, it lost its ability to reform. Taking the chance, I quickly pulled out a potion to heal Atis. As soon as Atis returned to human form, he staggered toward the Fuyao, forcing magic into the broken body. He wanted to make it confess who was behind it. But instead, the creature screamed and spat out a circular token. I rushed forward and picked it up. For characters were engraved on it, Great Earth. Suddenly, the Fuyao erupted into mad laughter. His teeth began glowing with an eerie blue light. Atis's face went pale. Before he could even warn me, the entire area exploded in a deafening blast. Night fell. At the explosion site, several strange figures arrived. Clearly, they were outsiders from Earth. They couldn't believe the Fuyao had chosen to self-destruct. After all, he had only become one out of fear of death. The explosion was so powerful it erased all traces of the battle. But something didn't add up. The detonation occurred 2 kilometers away from where we had fought. The truth was, just before the self-destruction, I had idly kicked the creature's round skull aside. That small, thoughtless action had saved our lives. Later, during our talk, I learned that Atis was a dragonkin created by the dark goddess Galil. I, in turn, revealed my own identity as an outsider. Surprisingly, Atis wasn't afraid, but I didn't want to drag him down. So in the end, I parted ways with him and set out on my own journey to grow stronger. After several days of travel, I finally arrived at the underground city of Halden, where all the northern region's worst criminals were imprisoned. Rumor had it, they'd recently captured even an outsider so terrifying that hardened felons feared him. But I had a more pressing problem. I was broke, unable to even cover basic living expenses. Reluctantly, I joined a construction crew, planning to earn some money through hard labor. Just then, I spotted someone holding up a sign in the crowd. Looking closer, it was Atis. Without hesitation, I rushed over, grabbed him, and pulled him away from the masses. When I saw the massive villa he now owned, I couldn't help but sigh. People's fortunes really were worlds apart. Even more surprising, this world had refrigerators. Overjoyed, I ran to open it, hoping for a chilled drink. But no matter how I pulled, the door wouldn't budge. Turns out, refrigerators here were magical devices, restricted by level. After a long chat, ATIS once again invited me to form a party with him. He promised there was a way I could keep my level hidden while also gaining fame, a chance to approach the goddess herself. The next day, he brought me to the Hunters Association to register. During the level test, following Atis's instructions, I crushed the testing orb in my hand. The crowd immediately thought I was causing trouble and prepared to arrest me. But ATIS quickly explained that I was a warrior of the Boltra clan, descendants of the Sword King. At once, the mood shifted. Everyone looked at me with respect, no longer questioning my actions. Because in the eyes of the Sword King's lineage, magical tools were nothing more than dead objects. With Atis's help, I was officially recognized as his guardian knight, safe from suspicion at least for now. Still, I couldn't quite enjoy it. Since the moment we entered the Hunters Association, ATIS had been surrounded by countless women. Meanwhile, I was popular too, but only with men. Honestly, I was speechless. In the days that followed, I no longer had to hide my power. I could finally hunt monsters freely for experience. In battle, I even developed my own technique, Lightning 5/. Though weaker than my true strikes, it allowed me to herd monsters together. ATIS would then unleash a torrent of fire, reducing them to ashes. From their corpses, green wisps of energy floated up, essence. Only monsters slain by dragons released such energy. It did nothing for me, but for ATIS, it was vital. Unlike humans, dragons couldn't level up normally. They could only grow stronger by devouring the essence of the dead. But there was a limit. Taken too much, and they would explode. Since dragons lived for millennia, they needed greater and greater amounts of essence to grow. That's why many ancient dragons fell into madness, slaughtering indiscriminately to hoard essence in vast wells, places humans called the Dragon Dynasty. What ATIS didn't know, however, was that the Dragon Dynasty had already been gifted by the ancients to the Earth Alliance. Now, Earthlings used it as a laboratory, throwing violent criminals into the well for experiments. After decades, they succeeded in implanting artificial systems into human bodies. These systems granted incredible combat strength, but could never level up. To perfect them further, Earthlings needed dragon bloodlines. But since dragons and Earth were allies, open experiments were impossible. That's why, after ATIS killed the Fuyao, investigators began searching for him. They scoured hunter associations, looking for records of hunters whose growth was unnaturally fast. For a while, nothing stood out until one investigator spotted a photo in the newspaper. It showed ATIS and me, standing side by side. He studied it, then smiled and shook his head. No, their levels aren't high enough. They're too flashy, too obvious. But in truth, ATIS and I had been deliberately making a name for ourselves. To gain recognition, we joined other parties, showing off our strength, but never working with the same team twice, to keep our mystery intact. The plan worked. Soon, everyone wanted to team up with the Sword King's descendant. And today was our first joint raid with another squad, targeting a dungeon. The grunts were quickly wiped out, and we pressed deeper, reaching the dungeon's core. There, an enormous hairy relic appeared, and with it, a giant spider. Brad, one of the squad leaders, lit up with excitement. If the Artepet is here, then this spider must be the dungeon boss. But as I eyed the creature, doubt gnawed at me. Something felt off. Before I could voice it, Brad and his teammates charged forward. In just 2.5 seconds, they severed the spider's legs. Brad drove his spear straight through its head, killing it instantly. The squad erupted in cheers. They had just become dungeon closers, legends who could etch their names into history. But ATIS and I were uneasy. The spider's level was far too low to be a true boss. And sure enough, as Brad turned to fist bump his partner Martin suddenly vanished. Brad looked up, and his blood ran cold. Looming above us was the real boss, a colossal spider, dwarfing everything around it. Furious at the death of its kin, it opened its maw and unleashed a beam of pure magic at Brad. The blast triggered a devastating explosion. When the smoke cleared, Brad was miraculously unharmed. Because ATIS, sensing the incoming magical surge, had instantly cast a refracting barrier, shielding everyone. Enraged at the failed ambush, the Spider King raised its massive, bristling limbs and hurled them toward ATIS. Brad scrambled to his feet. The Spider King's body suddenly exploded on the spot. That was thanks to the staff tied to Otis's large pack. Everyone, including Brad, was stunned at the sight. A level 50 boss, one shot. Something Brad never could have imagined. With the Night Spider King dead, I gained nearly 20,000 experience points. But for me, it was still just a drop in the bucket. We pulled out the Artepet and left the dungeon. On the way back, Brad curled up in the corner of the cable car, drowning in guilt over how his recklessness had led to his teammate's death. But the moment we stepped out of the dungeon, he froze because Martin, who was supposed to be dead, was standing there waiting for him. The truth was, at the instant Martin was about to be flung away, I had stepped in and caught him, saving his life. When Brad learned what had happened, he immediately gathered his team and bowed deeply to us in gratitude. Listening from outside the door, I couldn't help but grin. This dungeon raid had done a good deed, and earned us more fame in the process. Truly, killing two birds with one stone. As long as I became famous enough, the goddess would surely come seeking me before long. But just as I was reveling in the thought, ATIS was quietly taken away in a carriage. Inside, a man studied him carefully before speaking. "You really do look a lot like Lady Adora." Hearing that name, Otis's face went pale with shock. Adora, his elder sister. 10 years ago, she had fought side by side with the 4 great heroes against the ancient evil dragons. They won the war, but she never returned from the battlefield. Now, ATIS glared at the man, demanding to know his true purpose. Calmly, the man opened the carriage door, inviting ATIS to talk elsewhere. But what he never expected was that the carriage had stopped right outside Otis's own home. Sensing something wrong, I rushed in, knocked the coachman out cold, and stormed inside. The moment I laid eyes on the man, I assumed he was some perverted stalker. He tried to explain, but I didn't give him the chance. I beat him down hard, then searched his body, finding a token in his pocket. ATIS recognized it instantly. A crest representing the goddess of light. The man, face swollen from the beating, finally managed to speak. His name was Otto, a high priest serving the goddess of light. He had come to seek a secret alliance with ATIS, only to be mistaken for a creep and pummeled by a barbarian like me. Embarrassed, I pretended not to understand his words, trying to smooth over the awkwardness. Otto then handed ATIS a photograph. The man in the picture was named Yalehan. Today, Yalehan had become the ruler of the Dragon Dynasty. Reports showed his followers were helping refugees in nearby villages, while also spreading word of the Dragon Dynasty's glory. Not only did this cover up the history of the evil dragons nearly ending the world 10 years ago, but it also made refugees worship him as a hero. ATIS was furious. The Dragon Dynasty had been destroyed after that great war. If left unchecked, the ancient dragons would surely rise again. Otto sighed helplessly. Yalehan was cautious. He and his comrades had left no evidence of wrongdoing, so the church couldn't act against someone hailed as a hero by the people. Worse, Yalehan was now recruiting skilled magicians. The church wanted ATIS to infiltrate the Dragon Dynasty and investigate. Hearing the danger, I immediately volunteered to go with him. But Otto refused. My massive size would draw too much attention, making Yalehan suspicious. Frustrated, I declared I wouldn't allow the mission to proceed. But to my shock, ATIS agreed to go alone. No matter how I tried to stop him, he stood firm. This was about the honor of the Benitez family. He couldn't let the dragon dynasty his sister died destroying continue to exist. Though he was a dragon himself, his life had been saved by the former leader of the Benitez clan. In the end, our argument escalated into a fight. And we parted bitterly. Atis boarded Otto's carriage alone. To better blend in, Atis disguised himself as a woman. But his beauty only drew even more attention. From a distance, a blind girl noticed him immediately. "How curious," she murmured. "Why would a level 45 mage hide himself as level 30 here?" The girl could see his true level because of the artificial system implanted in her body. It gave her the power to perceive others' levels, and had turned her from an ordinary person into a level 34 magic swordsman. After reviewing Atis's application, the examiner announced he qualified for admission without a test. Atis froze for a moment. It all seemed a little too easy. Even the blind girl was surprised. Without warning, she drew her weapon and charged at him, wanting to test his strength herself. Atis had no choice but to fight back with low-level spells. He knew that using high-tier magic here would expose his identity. But before he could decide, a massive brute suddenly stepped between them, swinging a giant hammer down on the girl. The blow was so devastating it killed several nearby participants instantly. A survivor cried out in shock, recognizing the man. It was Polikli the Glutton, recently released from the prison camp, and already level 45. He raised his weapon to strike down even the examiner. But to his horror, his hammer began to melt. At the last second, Atis risked exposure, casting a high-level spell to save the girl. She stared at him in confusion, unable to understand why he would save her. Polikli, enraged at losing his weapon, pulled out another hammer and swung at Atis. Just as it was about to hit, a beam of white light shot down, shattering the attack. The examiner appeared before them, his body radiating a crimson glow. With one punch, he obliterated Polikli instantly. Atis was stunned. That red aura, the legendary energy known as rage. In this world, energy came in 4 forms: vitality, mana, rage, and martial force. Rage was the rarest. It could only be mastered through rigorous training. But when unleashed, its power far surpassed the other 3. Atis never imagined that a mere examiner of the Dragon Dynasty could wield such strength. After all, Polikli had been incredibly powerful, yet was felled in a single strike. Soon after, Atis followed the group deeper into the Dragon Dynasty. But strangely, he couldn't sense the presence of any true dragons. As he pondered whether the dragon nest could really be activated, the examiner approached him in private. He claimed he would take Atis to meet Yalehan. But once they were far enough, the examiner revealed a token of the goddess of light. He was an undercover agent Otto had planted. Just as he was about to reveal the mission details, a man crackling with lightning suddenly appeared. With a single move, he erased the examiner from existence. "You really were a spy of the church," the man sneered. "Now tell me, who are you, beautiful lady?" It was Yalehan himself. Using his system, he saw Atis's true level instantly. A fight erupted. Yalehan grew suspicious of Atis's identity, while Atis knew that as long as he didn't transform, his dragon bloodline would remain hidden. But as a level 45 mage, he was no match for Yalehan. Within moments, Yalehan had him beaten and dangling in the air. "I'll give you 3 seconds, he said coldly. "Show me your trump card." As the countdown ended, a surge of draconic energy suddenly erupted across the Dragon Dynasty. Yalehan's eyes widened. "So it's true you are the dragon I've been searching for." He had been publicizing the Dragon Dynasty just to lure Atis here. But what he didn't expect was the energy being absorbed didn't come from Atis. It was being drawn towards someone else entirely. Furious, Yalehan threw Atis aside. Barely alive, Atis was stunned. There was another dragon here? At least, his own secret wasn't exposed. Then the girl, Ailey, ran up to report the situation. But Yalehan wasn't concerned. When the Dragon Dynasty activated, he had already severed all contact with the outside world. No one could escape. As Yalehan moved to take Atis away for experimentation, Ailey suddenly spoke up. Exile him instead. Send him to repair the dynasty. Atis's eyes widened. Why would she help him? But Yalehan, not one to waste resources, handed Atis over to Ailey. She carried him back to her quarters, treated his wounds, and told him plainly, I already know the truth. You are of dragon blood. Atis tried to feign ignorance. But Ailey shook her head. I sensed it from the very first moment we met.